Canolan continent. A dense forest, lush and green, with tall tree crowns blocking out the sky and the sun, like a giant with teeth and claws. Richard wiped his eyes vigorously to confirm that he had read correctly. On the tree trunk, a small two-headed lizard was lazily basking in the sun. Various unnamed birds were chirping, and occasionally wild wolves emitting wind blades could be seen. He looked up at the sky and touched his face. He still looked like a lazy young man. Richard took a deep breath and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had traveled through time. In his previous life, he was a 20-year-old ordinary person, living a mediocre life. By chance, I died suddenly in an internet cafe. The time travel I was used to was still the same. After understanding the current situation, the first thing he did was to quickly search all over his body to see if there were any weird rings, strange necklaces, or some gray-haired grandfather. After searching for a while, Richard sighed regretfully, but found nothing. Forget it. Just accept the situation as it comes. At this moment, my head hurt, and memories came flooding back. The world he lives in is called the Canolan continent, a Western fantasy world of magic and fighting spirit. And his identity is that of a nobleman with no worries about food and clothing, a superior life, and a life that ordinary people can't imagine. Next to Richard, there was a rough man with a beard named Callio, whom he hired for 2 gold coins. Callio wore a light armor similar to that of the Middle Ages. He held a gleaming one-handed sword in his left hand and a round shield in his right hand, which looked very much like a soldier in the movie. As he walked, his armor made a clanging sound. At this moment, Callio was complaining and said in embarrassment, "Master Richard, doesn't your mental power fluctuate at all? Just now, you almost had your neck cut off by the winged wolf." Hearing this, Richard felt a toothache. It was estimated that the original owner had already died before it was his turn to travel through time. However, he discovered a brand new word and asked doubtfully, "What is spiritual power? How can you be a mage without mental strength? Are your brains burned?" Callio had a weird expression, and then he sighed. "It's not easy for you either. You're 20 years old, and you haven't awakened your talent yet. Take your time. I'll help people to the end today. Noble sir, please don't forget me in the future." Richard was a little dizzy, and a memory was brought out by Callio's words. He finally remembered why he entered the Warcraft forest. He must break through between life and death, awaken his spiritual power, and become a magician. Otherwise, he will lose his noble title. In this world, magic explodes, dragons roar, and is full of blood and war. With Richard's ability as a 3-legged cat, it would be difficult to live on the continent of Canolan without the protection of the Empire's noble law. They walked forward while chatting. Richard was unyielding and looked for Golden Finger unwillingly. In his previous life, he was a miserable, ordinary person, but the original owner of this body was even worse. At the age of 20, his talent has not been awakened, and he is almost like a waste. How can he get along in another world without relying on cheats? While thinking wildly, they gradually entered the depths of the Warcraft forest. The air suddenly became a lot more humid. The trees became taller, and sparse light and shadow shone on the ground through the branches and leaves. The surroundings were silent and a bit scary. At this time, Richard, who was immersed in thinking, suddenly felt something was wrong. There seemed to be something furry on his back, rubbing against him, and smelly hot air was sprayed on his head. With a bang, something heavy jumped down from the tree. Both of them were startled. Richard turned his head tremblingly. Suddenly, his pupils shrank, and he fell to the ground in fright. That's a 3-meter-tall brown bear. Its palms were bigger than cattail fans. Its sharp nails shone with cold light. Its mouth was open. Its teeth looked like terrifying barbs, and the hot breath it exhaled had a fishy smell. The brown bear stared at Richard and Shaw with red eyes, as if he was seeing delicious food. Their faces were dull. Before Richard could react, he felt a gust of wind blowing by his side, and the next second, a rain of blood broke out. The soldier next to him, Callio, was stabbed on the spot, with warm blood splattering all over his face. The soldier's expression of despair froze on his face, and Richard even saw his internal organs rolling out. "Great, Earth-broken bear!" Instinctively shouting out the name of the monster, Richard woke up as if from a dream, his eyes full of horror. The violent Earth bear didn't seem to worry at all that Richard would escape, and slapped Callio's body. His body trembled, and he heard a puff sound like being crushed into meat. Callio's whole body collapsed, and many things were squeezed out of the iron armor. A pool of blood flowed, dyeing the emerald green ground red. This is not true. Richard swallowed, held his head, and ran forward, sweat pouring from his forehead, and he kept calling in his heart, "Grandpa, it's time for you to show up, right? If you don't come again, no one will be able to inherit your mantle." Thinking is like a broken thread, ending suddenly. Richard lowered his head tremblingly, his expression stiff. The black bear paw penetrated his chest, and when he pulled it out, blood spurted out. The strength in his body gradually disappeared, his consciousness became blurred, and he gradually fell into darkness. The last thing he saw in his eyes was the earth-violent bear eating Callio's body. Just traveled through time, just die. Richard thought sadly as he smeared the face of a traveler. Chapter 2, QQ membership. The Earth Dire Bear likes to eat powerful humans, such as thin and chewy young men like Richard. After sniffing twice with its black nose, it walked away in disgust. Richard stared, lying on the ground with his face facing the sky, a big hole in his chest, and he could no longer die. A strange mechanical sound came from the silent forest. Dee Dee. Create happiness with heart. QQ membership system is loading. Detecting. The host is an ordinary QQ member level 1. Start repair program. Beep, beep, beep. The sky darkened, and it was dusk. During this period, many magical beasts passed by, and they saw Richard's body. Fortunately, there were no carnivores, only deer and birds. I don't know if it was due to the QQ membership system, but in short, Richard let out a painful sound and woke up leisurely. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he did was to get up quickly and run away in a panic. Just kidding, that geomancer bear is much scarier than the black bear. Didn't you see the soldiers had been knocked off like a baseball? After running forward for a long time, I realized that something was not right. When I looked back, there was no trace of the violent bear. Richard suddenly remembered something. He touched his chest with a strange expression and said to himself, I'm not dead." The big hole in his chest was gone, and only the tattered clothes were left. Richard looked in disbelief. He moved his body and found that everything was fine. Is it all an illusion? Thinking doubtfully, he took 2 steps forward. His brows jumped, and he saw a pile of tattered armors thrown on the ground, with bone residue next to them. That was Callio's armor, and Richard definitely didn't admit it. His expression was pale. In other words, I was killed by a bear? I survived again? What happened? A human being in 2 lives can survive a disaster. He smiled slightly self-deprecatingly. Perhaps it's the damn God who owes me this life. The twinkling light in his eyes calmed down, and he sighed as he remembered the sad past. But since you won't die, let's live well and start a new life in this different world. Suddenly, there were several vibrations on my wrist. I looked over suspiciously and saw that it was a black bracelet. This thing is even weirder. Richard swears that this thing has never happened before. His face was tense. Maybe this bracelet could explain all kinds of strange things. It doesn't matter if you don't see it. You will be shocked when you see it. There is a conspicuous symbol on that bracelet. A black penguin with a white belly and a red scarf. It is estimated that no one in Canolan continent would be able to guess the origin of this thing, even the oldest wise man. But Richard recognized it. In other words, as long as you are Chinese, you will know everyone. This is the penguin on QQ. Richard looked shocked and said ecstatically, others are the grandfather, and I am the QQ system. Penguin actually spoke directly in his mind, and a mechanical voice sounded. Richard, a member of QQ, is a newbie after completing the task and received 5 QB. QB can be used for lottery draws or to upgrade membership levels. Please allocate and use it yourself. When he touched the black bracelet, he felt an electric current course through his body, and then a virtual screen appeared in front of him. The upper right corner of the screen shows the QB balance, with 5 left. On the left is Richard's personal information. He is currently a QQ member at level 1. In the middle, there is a huge oval egg with a penguin sitting on it. The penguin is holding a hammer high as if it is about to smash the egg. There is a line of small text below. Bronze Prayer can obtain white items, has a chance to produce blue items. Richard murmured, "Bronze Prayer? What is this? There can't be any silver prayers or gold prayers, right?" Moving his eyes to the left, Richard smiled bitterly. Is it really him? According to the instructions, a bronze wish costs 10 QB at a time. Other wishes can obtain better equipment and cost more QB. However, QQ members with level 1 can only use bronze prayers. If you want to unlock other things, you need to draw more draws and accumulate experience to upgrade. When you reach QQ membership level 2, you will unlock silver prayer. Under the oval egg, there is a list of items that can be drawn from the egg pool. Richard felt happy. This was his golden finger, and his resurrection was thanks to his QQ membership. He couldn't help but ask, "Penguin, can I spend QB to resurrect the dead?" No. In order to keep the story going, the protagonist is forced to be resurrected once. If he dies again, he is really dead. Richard sighed in his heart and smacked his mouth with some pity. These small dissatisfactions were washed away by the dazzling equipment list. His eyes grew wider and wider as he looked through the equipment icons one by one. Unconsciously, his breathing became rapid. What is this? Advanced Light Mage Talent? Advanced Time Talent? Dragon Blood? It sounds awesome. And this, a golden spear called Dawn. Its introduction is simple. The weapon once used by the god of war is indestructible. As someone who often plays online games, Richard knows very well that gold represents power and is an artifact. In other words, this QQ membership gacha has a chance of getting a golden artifact. Look below, a white flaming bow and arrow called Seraph's Bow. It is the weapon used by Michael, and its grade is also golden. In addition, there were various skills, equipment, and materials with awesome names. Richard even saw a plus 15 strengthening stone. He didn't know how to use the strengthening stones in Canolan Continent, but if it could directly strengthen the equipment to plus 15, like in online games, that would be great. His smile is getting stronger and stronger. As long as the system is in place, Richard can continuously complete tasks, obtain QB, and then use them in draws to obtain a large number of artifacts. Dominating other worlds is not a dream. Look, not only equipment, but also talents can be drawn. Think about what Warrior Callio said about Richard. He has been useless for 20 years and has not even awakened the most rubbish mage talent. If Richard fails to show his power in the arcane ceremony the day after tomorrow, he will be kicked out of the family and stripped of his noble title. He was quite worried at first. After all, the original owner was thin and incompetent. But it's different now. With a QQ membership system, aren't advanced talents readily available? Then those old guys who look down on others will be surprised. Richard thought happily that he was also a European in his previous life, and he often won 5 yuan when buying scratch-off tickets, although he lost everything in the end. Then, let's draw a prize once. Verify the bloodline first. He chuckled and wiped his hands on his clothes for good luck. However, when preparing for the lottery, Richard ran into trouble. The lowest level of bronze prayer costs 10 QB per time. How can he draw with only 5 QB? At this time, Richard had an idea and clicked on the top task panel and found that there were indeed many tasks. There are 3 current tasks. 1. Become a first-level magician or warrior. 2. Earn 5 gold coins in Canolan. 3, if you want to try a lottery, come on. Completed. Chapter 3, QB Lottery. The rewards for the 3 tasks are the same, and you can get 5 QB. After Richard clicks to claim it, you'll have exactly 10 QB, and you can draw a lottery. When he clicked on the bronze wish, his fingers were trembling a little. After all, this was related to his future life. If possible, Richard hoped to win a talent prize, such as the time talent, which sounded high-end. Click on the lottery, and a line of prompts will appear. Bronze prayer can only produce blue items at most. Are you sure you will draw the prize? Richard clicked his tongue. It's really cheap, but not good. Why can't 10 QB draw a golden artifact? Not happy at all. Forget it, blue is fine too. Just give it a talent and you'll win. He took a few deep breaths and clicked on it tremblingly. The QB balance was cleared instantly. At the same time, the penguin riding on the egg moved. It tried hard to lift the big hammer and hit it hard. At that moment, Richard was so excited that his heart was beating so hard that he closed his eyes and did not dare to look. Through the slit of his eyelids, Richard saw a flash of white light. Wait, white light. It seems that no matter which game or world you are in, the whiteboard equipment is the most rubbish. Richard cursed angrily and looked at the item with some disappointment. The oval-shaped egg was smashed open, revealing an icon with a few words written on it. Stigma Master Talent. Stigma Master? A type of magician? Forget it, it's not bad. Although it's white, at least it's what I need. Richard said bitterly, clicked to confirm the use, and a white light fell from the sky. His body was shaken. He didn't feel any special changes. However, in the status bar, in addition to a QQ member level 1, there was another item, Stigma Master. In this way, I am a Stigmata Master. He looked himself up and down, frowned, and said, I should be able to shoot fireballs or something, right? After several attempts, Richard waved his arms in the air without even a spark. Stomping his feet angrily, Richard yelled at the cheater. Sure enough, the white one was no good. After venting his anger, the sky gradually darkened. The Warcraft forest at night was very scary. Richard shivered for a while, and the towering trees around him swayed in the wind, silently driving him away like monsters. The leaves rustled as they rubbed against each other. He became more and more frightened and thought about how to leave quickly. After taking a look at Callio's mutilated body not far away, Richard shook his head sympathetically, but his own life was still the most important, so he hurriedly left along the path of his memory. He walked all the way in fear, and finally left the Warcraft forest in the evening. During this period, he encountered several wind wolves and the like. Richard carefully hid behind the big tree, but luckily, he was not discovered. After walking for a long time, Richard's legs were sore. The trees on both sides became sparse and much lower. He was about to walk out of the Warcraft forest. Looking from a distance, the majestic brown city wall appeared in the field of vision. When his ears moved, he heard the noisy voices. Richard's face was filled with joy. He finally met a living person. The shadow of the violent bear lingered in front of his eyes. Richard decided to approach them. Being among the crowd, he could feel a great sense of security. Haha, I made a lot of money this time. The horns of the 3-horned antelope. These are precious medicinal materials. A tall, thick, rough man with a machete hanging on his waist and a dead antelope on his shoulder. Behind him were 3 similarly dressed companions. This kind of person is a mercenary. A group of people hang out in the Warcraft forest all day long, living a life of today and no tomorrow. They look tough. Their thick arms are full of muscles. They talk carelessly, and many of them have hideous scars on their bodies. Richard began to regret coming. These people seemed difficult to get along with, but they had come, and it would be too shameful to retreat. What's more, the group of mercenaries had already discovered him. The rough guy at the head was bald, and his head was as bright as a light bulb. He looked at Richard intently and wondered, how come the noble is in the Warcraft forest? Richard was originally wearing a black dress, but he had a hole in his chest and looked a little embarrassed. He touched his head awkwardly and said hello. "Hi, brave warriors. Can I go into the city with you?" The bald man had an incredible expression on his face. Those nobles were actually willing to walk with mercenaries? Normally, wouldn't they all hold their noble noses and tell the mercenaries to get lost with disgust on their faces? Rolling his eyes, the bald head looked at the badge on Richard's chest, which was a black and white square. The bald head smiled and said, "I am very happy, my dear noble lord." Regardless of the reason why this noble approached, Baldhead only knew that if there was a noble in the team, he would not have to pay the city entry tax. Several mercenaries were very enthusiastic. Under the secret reminder of the bald head, they all knew one thing. This young man with a sloppy appearance and weak muscles all over his body was the master of the Liska family. "Sir, my name is Hamba. What do you call me?" The bald man was very talkative. He showed off the antelope on his shoulders and said with a smile, "Are you interested in the three-horned antelope? Maybe I can sell it to you cheaper." Richard first told them cautiously that his name was Richard, and then politely rejected the three-horned antelope. All the etiquette are impeccable. After all, Richard is also a person who visits relatives all year round. Isn't it easy to exchange greetings? However, the bald man and the mercenaries became more and more curious. Was this nobleman's head caught in the door? Her behavior is similar to that of a newly married girl, and her speech is polite. Does her relationship put her and others on the same level as him? No matter what, as a mercenary, Baldhead was very happy to have a good relationship with a noble. The two parties chatted while walking, and Richard learned a lot of useful information from the bald head. This is a small city of 100,000 people called Bika City, which belongs to a small border kingdom. As for his identity, he was a well-known local nobleman. The bald man had seen the coat of arms of the Liska family from a distance, so he recognized Richard. "Master Richard, are you going into the Warcraft forest alone? You are so brave." The bald man said with a smile. As for Richard, his face looked ugly. Firstly, he was a little uncomfortable with the title of master, and secondly, it reminded him of the violent bear on the earth. He smiled bitterly and said, "Don't mention it. I never want to enter this ghost place again." "Master, I suggest you bring 2 more guards in the future. The Warcraft forest is still very dangerous." The bald head pointed at himself and their companions and said, "For example, in my team, we are all level 4 warriors. Even so, we don't dare to go too deep." He glanced at the forest behind him in awe and sighed. It is said that there is a hill in the center of the forest, and the owner of the hill is a monster comparable to a paladin. P.S. Recommend and collect. Rolling on my knees and begging. Chapter 4, Baka City. Richard's eyebrows jumped, and he asked curiously, "What is a paladin?" Hey, does that need to be said? Of course, it is the highest level of a warrior. After breaking through the 9th level of warrior, the next level is the saint level. Once you become a saint-level warrior, even the king will have to be polite to you. The bald man looked yearning, and then his face turned gloomy. People like us can only daydream. Our entire kingdom has not had a saint level in decades. From his mouth, Richard learned many new things. For example, the continent of Canolan is mainly divided into 2 professions: warriors who cultivate physical strength and those who focus on fighting spirit, and the magician who meditates to cultivate his mental power and destroys the world with a wave of his hand. It's hard to tell which of the 2 professions is stronger, but in terms of status, the magician is better. Richard himself also likes the mage profession because he can hide behind and cast magic safely. If he were asked to fight on the front line as a soldier, Richard would definitely shake his head faster than anyone else. As modern people, peace and friendship are the most important thing. Let the bloodshed be damned. The group of people walked out of the Warcraft forest, and their vision suddenly opened up. The sun was about to set on the horizon, and the blood-red light shone on their faces, which was a bit scary. At this time, Richard saw a very tall black tower in the city, soaring into the sky, as if it could touch the clouds. After asking, I learned that the name of the tower was the Tower of the World. Richard was not interested at the moment, so he didn't ask any more questions. Near the city gate, a bunch of mercenaries were waiting in line. The forest at night was very dangerous, and everyone chose to return to the city at this time. They chatted with each other, with either contented smiles or sad looks on their faces. Some people returned home with great rewards, while others stayed in the Warcraft forest forever. They are a group of guys who lick blood from their knives. Their heads hang from their belts and fall off if they are not careful. Richard was secretly glad that he was a noble. He didn't have to worry about food, drink, and clothing. His life was much better than that of a mercenary. In the continent of Canolan, the lowest level of people are civilians, and a little higher up are mercenaries. On both sides of the main city gate, painted red, are auxiliary city gates, which are built relatively low to facilitate entry and exit. The main door will only be opened when war is launched. Because there was a nobleman like Richard and the Bald Team, they patted their butts at the group of mercenaries who were lining up and stared at them and walked towards the nobles' only passage. There are a lot fewer people here, not one for a long time. The guarding soldiers are not like the ones next to them. They have nostrils in the sky and regard the mercenaries as their sons. After seeing the badge on Richard's chest, the soldier smiled and made a gesture of invitation. When his bald head saw it, he couldn't help but snorted. Bullying!